for folks who are new, please feel free to enter your comments into the chat box. That'll be viewable to all of us, but it's not going to be part of the recording. We just ask that you keep yourselves muted and keep your videos off so that the recording that does take place will include all the commissioners themselves. And anything you put in the chat, while it won't be part of the official minutes or anything, if we decide to save a record of it, it'll be included in our official documents. So in the unlikely event that someone does an information privacy request, I'm getting that term wrong, obviously. If someone requests those documents, then that might show up, but please don't let that prevent you from participating fully and entering any comments or reactions you may have. Tonight, we'll actually be having our beloved Vice Chair, Dalvin, facilitate our meeting. We really are working as a team, and Dalvin has really been helpful in stepping up when I had some things going on in my personal life that have not allowed me to be as responsive as I would have liked. But we're continuing to work as a partnership, and in that vein, we'll have Dalvin facilitate tonight's meeting.
Hey guys, happy Monday. I hope you're all doing well. So before we get started, I want to go quickly around the room and just ask you guys, how are you arriving today? Because I think that's important. And one of the things that Shabab and I have talked about is just our work continues to be highlighted as incredibly important given everything that continues to happen, right? Not just in our county, but I think across the country. And so I think it's important for us to, let folks know how we're arriving in this area. So I'm going to pass the ball to somebody and then you will pass it to somebody else. Jen, my fellow social worker, I will start with you.
I was just trying to change my name to my real name and you busted me thinking.
I did.
I'm doing well. Yeah, the Easter holiday was great. I'm loving the sunshine, and everybody in my family is healthy and happy, and we're looking at reopening some of our programming to in-person programming in May. So that is super exciting, and things are kind of coming along a little bit. And I just continue to help families and play my flute to stay sane.
Nice.
And this is my supper. It's a peep. There you go. That's what you got. And I'm going to pass it to Nadia.
Hey, everyone. I think I'm coming in hopeful. I think there's some changes at the state level that give me some. I think Caroline sent an email around, and I think that's really important. It's made me think about the conversations we'd have here. So hopeful.
And who are you going to pass it to, Nadia?
Oh, sorry about that. I'll pass it on to Alicia.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to echo that and say that I'm trying to stay hopeful. However, I am in a bit of anguish following the recently publicized incident with the uniformed military lieutenant as he was assaulted by a Virginia officer. That just lets me know. And then also the 20-year-old who was killed in Minneapolis. That just lets me know, reminds me how important our work is. This is not just something that's just confined to one area, especially given the recommendations by the Reimagining Public Safety Task Force. We know that this is something that is even touching Montgomery County. And so it just reminds me of how important our work is, and I'm glad to be able to have the opportunity to do something about it.
And who are you passing it to?
I will pass it to, who's on the call? My goodness. Caroline.
Hi, thanks, Alicia. And so I'd say Alicia kind of frames it for me. I feel hopeful and frightened at the same time. I feel hopeful. I'm really proud of our state. We had some legislation that was, we had statutes that were among the most problematic in the country. We sort of set the tone for the Law Enforcement Officers Bill of Rights, and the state legislature has remedied a number of things. So that made me really feel proud of where we are, and think about the role that we have to play in Montgomery County about taking that forward, which was the sort of genesis of my email, which was just to think about where does the state sort of send us the message that we have to work on local implementing legislation, or where are there gaps. And I'm frightened for the same reasons that Alicia said. There's still such a problem. It's good that we're seeing some potential for change, but the change hasn't happened yet as much as we need. And so there's still so much work to be done. And I'm just grateful to all of you for being here and for being participants and making sure that we continue to focus on this really important issue.
Thank you, Carolyn. And who are you passing it to?
So I keep forgetting. I'll pass it to Vernon.
Thank you. I'm above ground looking down, and I'll pass it on to Jerome.
Thank you, sir. Very hopeful. To echo everyone's points about what's happening in the news, and very excited. My little man's going to be here any day now. So if I have to hop off the Zoom call, you'll know why. I'll pass it off to Jasmine.
Hi, I'm coming in hopeful, as everyone has said. Pretty grateful to be on campus finally, and that my semester is coming to an end.
And who are you passing it to, Jasmine?
I'll pass to Sherry.
Hi, I joined late, so I'm assuming we're just giving our little personal updates. So I don't have one. As you all may or may not know, a few weeks ago, my husband had a heart attack. And so he is doing well, recovering, and, we are, living life. But, we got our first vaccines the other day, which was hugely great. And so those are my updates.
And I think I can speak for all of us who are sending good healing vibes to your husband, Ms. Branson. Just a lot of love and a lot of good energy for your husband as he makes his way back.
Thank you.
And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Justice and Eric are the only ones left. Am I right? So Justice, let's go to you, and then let's go to Eric.
Good evening, everyone. I am coming in hopeful. Jerome, I kind of understand where you're at, but I'm on the other side of that with young children who might turn into gremlins in a little bit. So if I do drop off, it is to manage the gremlins so that they don't ransack my house. But I am also hopeful because, yes, I also was recently vaccinated. Kids are back at school. I am hopeful that someday soon this group might actually meet in person. I will dream of that. Of that reality that I will hope to see everyone in person sometime soon. So that is where I am coming from, and I will pass it over to Eric.
Thank you, everyone. Good evening. I'm hopeful, but I think I'm feeling impatient. It's April. We started meeting last August, and I'm sort of feeling impatient for us to begin to accomplish more.
I think that's an entirely justified feeling, I think. Chief Patel, how about you? How are you arriving with us tonight, sir?
Well, I'm going to call it a win because I figured out that when you're on a Teams call on video, you can't be on a Zoom call on video too. I thought we were on Teams and I had to figure out that we're over here. So good evening, everybody. Certainly a lot has happened over the last couple of weeks. So as a senior manager in the police department trying to figure it out. The legislation is going to take a lot of work on everybody's part to understand how to implement legislation, right? How do you take that law now and make it into what the intent was? And we've got some time to figure that out. Certainly, like everybody, don't like seeing stuff on TV when, not to dive into the Minneapolis thing, but you see what is being, purported by their chief as was an accident, but there's obviously a terrible outcome in that case. The Chauvin trial is going on. There's a lot going on, but I continue to be proud of the work that the men and women do every day. There's still there's an increase in crime, and there's increase. The world is, getting back to normal. The weather's getting warmer. People are getting out, but unfortunately, we are seeing unprecedented, numbers as it relates to homicides, carjackings, different things. So I'm kind of hopeful that we can just find, collectively a way to reset our planet across the globe and, get to where we all want to be. I appreciate having you here tonight on behalf of Chief Jones.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's dive right in because we do have a jam-packed agenda. First order of business is approving the minutes from our 2 March meetings. Does anybody have any corrections that they would like Carlos to make before we get a first and a second to approve the minutes? No? That is the first time that's ever happened, guys. See, so we are making progress. We are making progress. So can I get a first to approve the minutes for March 8th and March 23rd, please?
So approved.
Second?
Seconded.
There we go. Carlos, minutes for March 8th and March 23rd are approved unanimously. I've always wanted to say that. I told Shabab that she should have given me that chance to say that. The second administrative item that you guys should see on the agenda is that we did receive answers for questions submitted to both Chief Jones and Sergeant Brewer. Carlos sent them to everybody. They were attached as a Word document. Did anybody not receive them so Carlos can resend them out, or just a quick show of hands that everybody received them? Did everybody receive the answers to our questions? Okay. And Chief Patel, please pass on our thanks to Chief Jones and Sergeant Brewer for taking the time to answer all those questions. There were a lot of them. It was not a short list that we sent over, so please let them know that we appreciate them answering those questions. And then the third thing on the administrative items is that there is mandatory ethics training coming up that we have to complete before the end of this month. Am I right, Carlos, in that?
Yes.
Yep.
And I sent out the 3 different dates, the 3 different options. So if you haven't gotten back to me, please do so I can get back to the Ethics Commission. But yeah.
Yeah. So we have to do that before the end of the month. Just send whatever date it is that you're going to do it to Carlos, so that way he can make sure that he tracks it. And then that way none of us get a nasty email in May saying, oh my God, why didn't you do it? Because I don't know about you guys, but I hate nasty emails. Robin, I see that you showed up. Thank you for joining us. No worries for being late. How are you arriving today? I'd be remiss if I did not ask that. And you're on mute. I can't hear you.
Yeah. I walked. So I got my exercise in.
There you go. That's a good way to start. Okay, so we wanted to, Carlos had received an email. So what we're going to do now is we're going to have a presentation from Dr. Christopher Rogers. He's on the Montgomery County, he's working on the Montgomery County Community Needs Assessment. And we thought it'd be important because he had sent an email to Carlos asking for one of us to come and speak to them sometime in June. And we thought it'd be important before we asked one of you to go and speak to this, that you hear the work that they're doing, and then we can ask some follow-up questions. Dr. Rogers, thank you for joining us today. And he is on mute.
Okay, good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Hope everyone is well. Thank you for having me this evening. Let me share my screen, and I will jump right into my presentation. Okay, so hopefully everyone can see my screen. Again, Dr. Rogers, I'm the Chief Policy and Strategy Officer for Public Health Services within the Department of Health and Human Services. And I'd like to just spend just a couple minutes just talking to you a little bit about the Community Health Needs Assessment. So Montgomery County, specifically Healthy Montgomery as a local health improvement coalition for Montgomery County, we're in the midst of our Community Health Needs Assessment that we conduct every 5 years. Now, the Community Health Needs Assessment will identify and prioritize significant health needs throughout the Montgomery County community. These health needs that are identified and prioritized will ultimately be reported in a Community Health Needs Assessment report that will help guide the county's health initiatives over the next 5 years, as well as other collaborative efforts with boards, committees, commissions, internal, external organizations such as the ones you represent here today. And so just a little overview of the community health needs assessment. And so mainly it's a 3-part data collection process. One data collection component is a quantitative data collection where we are collecting primary and secondary data. On the primary data, we're going to be mailing, we have a contractor, and surveys will be mailed to residents throughout Montgomery County, somewhere about 10,000 residents. And we'll be oversampling certain minority communities to make sure that we have their participation and their representation. The survey will measure things such as health behaviors, dietary patterns, chronic conditions, social conditions, etc. And then the secondary component, we will be analyzing familiar data sets that you may be familiar with, such as the census data, various state level data, and also some federal data such as the Burford's Behavioral Risk Factor Surveillance Survey data. There's also an environmental scan of existing resources across the Montgomery County community. That's going to be a survey through, for example, SurveyMonkey. We'll email that to various organizational partners throughout the county to really understand their assets and perhaps identify gaps in existing resources to address both health and social needs. And the other portion of it is a qualitative portion, which I want to talk to you about. And let me just hop to the next slide. So there's 2 components of the qualitative portion. We have focus groups, which I'll mention to you first. So the focus groups are designed to learn about the health needs, barriers, as well as the perspectives and perceptions and attitudes about the health of specific communities throughout Montgomery County. Now, these focus groups will be virtually online because we're in a COVID-19 environment. We'll be utilizing Zoom. We're going to have 30 focus groups made up of about 30 participants per focus group. Participants will receive a $20 grocery store gift card for their participation. And just to kind of give you an idea of some of the subgroups that will be made up of the focus groups, you see on your screen, we have non-English speaking focus groups, for example, in Mandarin, Spanish, French, Amharic, and then we have focus groups with other subgroups or populations across Montgomery County. Really, Montgomery County is a very diverse community. And so the goal here was, given the resources that we have, given the methodology for qualitative online focus groups, we wanted to try to make sure we get a cross-section of the diverse Montgomery County community with some advisement from our Community Health Needs Assessment Advisory Board. Now, the portion I want to kind of bring to your attention is the key informant interviews. Now, the key informant interviews likewise will be to gather the thoughts and perspectives of really key stakeholders, individuals and throughout Montgomery County who really can serve as sort of like an expert regarding the content in which they're going to share, so that we can also hear from them about potential needs, barriers, and solutions to address the health and well-being of Montgomery County residents. Now, these focus groups, these key informant groups will also occur online via Zoom, and they're going to be about 1 to 5 participants per interview group. And just give you an idea of the various key informant stakeholder groups that will be participating. We have our Montgomery Cares clinics, they deliver medical service for uninsured adults in Montgomery County. We have faith leaders, organizations primarily serving certain minority populations. And then we also have the boards, committees, and commissions. So let me just kind of stop sharing my screen just for 1 second. And just want to kind of speak a little bit about the boards, committees, and commissions. So for that particular key informant interview group, we've identified 5 boards, committees, or commissions to participate. And so we want to bring these 5 boards, committees, and commissions together so that they can provide some insight into the nature of health and social problems and provide some type of recommendations for solutions. And they are the Fire and Emergency Services Commission, the Interagency Commission on Homelessness, the Board of Social Services, the Racial Equity and Social Justice Advisory Committee, and you are the Police Advisory Committee. And so you all know, as well as I know, that the safety, the health of our populations and the individuals that we serve in Montgomery County are of chief concern for both policing and public health. And so we know that both our community residents, our law enforcement officials, many who are community residents, they experience morbidity and mortality. They also, many times our police, our law enforcement are the first individuals that will arrive on the scene when there's some type of health or some type of public health emergency. And so it's important that as the public health department here in Montgomery County, that we get some insight from someone on your commission for this particular interview group. And so the ask has already been kind of made before I present it. And so let me just kind of stop there and see if anyone perhaps has any questions for me. And I guess eventually I'll circle back around with Carlos to kind of see who is the individual that would like to participate. The interview will occur on June the 23rd at 6 p.m. And the individual who would like to participate, once I get your contact information, either myself or my program manager, we'll send you an email with all the details on how to register and make sure you get the Zoom link. So let me stop there and kind of turn the meeting back over to you, Carlos, or whoever's leading the meeting. Apologize.
No problem. Thank you, Dr. Rogers. Does anybody have any questions for Dr. Rogers pertaining to the community needs assessment and just what is the ask that they're making of us? No questions. You guys are usually a talkative bunch.
It was very clear.
Yeah.
So thank you, Dr. Rogers.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Eric, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that I was, my thoughts went to the questions of quantitative measures. I was interested in sort of to what extent the assessment is going to look at people who are hospitalized due to gunshots, stabbing, violence against youth, vehicle collisions, rapes, assaults, to the extent that these are matters that the police or people thinking about policing would be interested in. These would be health incidents that I would hope that the assessment attempted to evaluate in some way.
Yeah, that's actually an awesome, excellent question. The quantitative survey will have questions about injuries, both unintentional and intentional injuries. So for example, and I'm actually looking at the survey right now, we asking one question about some of the important health problems that affect the health of the participant and their community. Fall-related injuries, firearm-related injuries is on the list. We're also motor vehicle crash injuries, over policing is also on the list. We're also going to kind of turn it on the other side of the coin and say, what are some health areas that could possibly be recommended solutions? Likewise, we have the same list there, firearm related injuries, over policing, motor vehicle crash injuries with respect to the quantitative. Also with respect to the qualitative, there's also a chance that community residents can mention any one of those particular areas or topics or domains as a potential important health problem that needs attention to further address as part of this community health needs assessment and the next steps that come out of that.
Could I follow up, Eric? Just a question of whether your quantitative assessment plans to go beyond the survey data to look at analysis of hospital records and insurance records, which would give you a complete picture of what's going on in the county?
Not specifically for the public health department, but we do partner closely with the hospital partners throughout Montgomery County. And so they are also, MedStar is actively wrapping up their community health needs assessment. We will see some of that data and we'll pour some of that data into our community health needs assessment. I know that Johns Hopkins, I believe, is actively getting ready to start their community health needs assessment. And so we're all kind of on the same timeline, and eventually we'll pour some of that data into our community health needs assessment also. Mainly because at the health department, we're looking at it more so from a population health perspective, and we want to pull that data in to kind of inform our entire community health needs assessment. Whereas the hospitals, they'll look at it from the defined community in which they serve, and then some may or may not really evaluate their actual hospital data. We do have access to various data sets from the state of Maryland. For example, the State Health Improvement Plan on the SHIP, they actually send us data yearly. I know we just got some data in from the Maryland Department of Health that the team is actively evaluating to which many of that data is informed from hospital records, CRISP, all of that data that kind of come from the hospitals and reported back to the state.
Thank you.
I have a question. What you had this slide up for your focus groups, and I didn't well, anyway, I didn't notice, so I'm just asking. What outreach is being done to the homeless community, or people in I mean, it seems to me that if we're talking about mental health, then that's population that may be particularly underserved.
Yeah, that was a big challenge. We kind of went back and forth as a team to evaluate that. We got some consultation, some guidance from our CHNA advisory committee, which is made up of about 40 or so organizational partners and also community partners. And then we also spoke to our colleagues over in services to end and prevent homelessness. And at the end of the day, because these are online focus groups and the homeless population is very transient, and trying to stand up an online focus group in a homeless shelter in a conference room, putting up Zoom so people can be social distancing, all those logistical things, everything that I'm kind of mentioning, plus some things that we've talked about, we decided not to have a focus group specific to the homeless population. However, there's a random chance that the community residents who participate in some of these other groups, they may have been homeless at a previous time in their life, and they can share from their perspectives. Another way that we try to overcome this is by specifically having, as I mentioned, the Interagency Commission on Homelessness to be a part of this key informant interview group with the boards, committees, and commissions.
Thank you.
Can you just elaborate on how the Interagency Commission on Homelessness is interacting? I mean, I understand, the purpose of the focus groups, and I understand that, when it comes to the homeless population, they may not be, this may not be the format that one could really gather information from them. I get that part. But it seems if we're talking about, access to mental health services and need, and, people most likely to encounter police because they're having, mental health stuff, that's, I mean, I guess so, so I'm just curious as to whether there is a particular component, maybe homeless advocates. I mean, who's speaking for them? I mean, who's speaking for that experience? Because I'll be honest with you, I think, if I was homeless, you know, it might be, I don't know if it's a chicken or the egg. I don't know if, you know, you need mental health services before you become homeless, or being homeless is what makes you need mental health services. I mean, it's a chicken and an egg kind of thing. So I'm just, you know, I guess I'm concerned that there's not, especially, you know, given the interaction with law enforcement, that that often becomes part and parcel of the experience of homelessness. I'm just, I guess I'm not feeling like there is going to be a recommendation, outcome, whatever, that will address probably a population who may take up a lot of the resources we're thinking about here.
Oh, yeah, good question. And I think I failed to mention that we also have a key informant interview group with community or social service providers. And I know one of those providers is one of the major homeless providers in the county. I can't tell you which one off the top of my head because there's so many different organizations involved, 5 per key informant interview group. So that's 5 times 12. So we will have their perspectives there. So and again, because this is a focus group, yeah, we can imply that mental health is a particular issue, but I don't know if that's actually going to be an issue spoken of in these focus groups. I would surmise that it is, because mental health is a big topic, but if that is raised from the community residents as a particular area that needs to be addressed and needs to be concerned, as the health department, we will prioritize that as part of our community health improvement plan to make sure that we try to figure out programs, resources, policies, et cetera, funding to align to address particular mental health issues. So, I mean, that's kind of the best way that I can respond to that, is that we have the representation from the homeless population with the community and social service providers. We have a key former stakeholder there. We have a representative from the Interagency Commission on Homelessness, which kind of, they are local advocates to encourage and support efforts across the county to address housing and homeless issues and to reduce homelessness. And again, perhaps maybe you'll be the individual from this commission who can share additional insight and perspectives on homelessness and the importance of addressing that as part of our overall health and well-being. And we look forward to you representing if you're the individual. And so we will gather different perspectives from multiple different people, and we'll be able to really gather the information necessary to identify and prioritize health needs, one in which could be homelessness and mental health, injuries, violence, et cetera, that we'll hear and that we'll begin to prioritize.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers. I appreciate that. And guys, if you're interested in being the commissioner that participates in the interview, just send Shabab, myself, and Carlos an email. And then Dr. Rogers, what we'll do is we'll try to get you the commissioner's information within the next 30 days. So that way it's at least a month before the interview. So that way you know who it is that's going to participate. Okay?
Okay, perfect. Thank you,
awesome.
Everybody.
Thank you for joining us. All right. Have a good one.
Night. Thank you.
All right, guys, let's go right into subcommittee updates. We'll try to keep these as succinct as possible. I will start with Alicia, Nadia, and Eric's subcommittee.
Awesome. Great. So just one update, one big one.
Caroline.
Sorry, Caroline and Caroline.
As you might know, we've been working and interviewing folks and having a lot of meetings, and obviously hearing from the chief of police and hearing from Sergeant Brewer gave us a lot of insight. But processing that, we wanted to put together a letter of concern. There are a lot of things that as a subcommittee we've felt that we are worried about, that there are not clear answers for. And it's not to put anybody on the spot or to get into conversation right now. This is something I spoke with Madam Chair about, to just add into a following meeting where we have the time and you all have the letter in front of you, have time to read it, do whatever it is that you need to it. But we wanted to present it because that's something that we're working on as a subcommittee. The other thing that we're trying to do is, and I want you all to understand, we've gathered perspectives, not just from community members, we've gathered perspectives from Chief Jones himself, from Sergeant Brewer, and from other people, right? So I think it's important to, whenever you receive the letter, I will send it after the meeting. Whenever you receive the letter, to think of it in the perspective of, we all put this letter together for a very specific purpose. We've been held back a lot by state legislation. And I think now we have some sort of path to be able to do a little bit more of the accountability that we want to get into. I think with what happened today, with having folks who are being still murdered out in the street, particularly, I mean, is state sanctioned. I think that's something that's important to note. But I was just making sure I had his name right, Dante Wright. And if anybody's interested in helping his child and his partner, please let me know, send me a message directly. But yes, so going back to the letter, I just wanna make sure that I preface it with that before you all receive it.
Awesome.
If I'm missing something, my subcommittee members, please let me know.
And Caroline's very salient, the points that she raised in her email regarding the latest legislative action by the Maryland General Assembly. Caroline, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Can you, because I can't say it any better than you did. Can you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just think there are a number of things that the legislation addressed that we have been specifically talking about, and that county legislation has been addressed to. For example, how the boards would be structured. That's obviously seems kind of obsolete now that the state has overridden that and created an entirely new legislative or law enforcement oversight mechanism. So I imagine the county council is going to be looking at how it implements those provisions. And so I just think it seems to me very important for us to know kind of what exactly is left for the county to do. Where are the provisions that suggest that the county has to adopt implementing legislation? Where are there simply policy decisions to be made? Where are there gaps that aren't addressed at all? I think school resource officers, I don't think was addressed. So anyway, so I really am eager to have a briefing. I understand completely that that Carlos and Susan are completely overcome and overwhelmed with their with all the work that they have, and I'm appreciative of that. I don't know if that means we should wait, or whether my inclination would be that we reach out to a few advocates, or maybe somebody from the state legislature who's been working specifically on it, and ask them for a briefing, so that we can, because I think this is exactly the area where we're going to be most relevant. And I don't want to continue to focus on things that are no longer in the purview of the county.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Why not reach out to Will Smith? I mean, he's chairman of
Will
the
would be
judiciary.
great. Will would be great. I mean, I'd be happy to do that. Or
well, yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, so I'll say that after we saw your email, Carolyn, Shabab and I sat down and we're gonna, that's the path we're going to take, is just reach out directly to the folks that crafted the legislation and made sure that it passed, because I think that's going to be the easiest path. I think also being conscious of Carlos and Susan's time with all the work that they have with the FY22 budget, I think it'll fall on Shabab and I, and that's totally fine.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Robert.
I wonder how the legislation affects a couple of things. I saw sort of tangential stories, but nothing very clear about how it affects the release of personnel records. And that seems, and by inference, the outcome from disciplinary processes.
Robin, there's
I-
actually in the summary that Carlos sent out, there's a discussion of where the personnel records are available. I mean, I think we could get from Will Smith's office more detailed information,
Yeah,
but there's definitely, except for certain exceptions, there's the availability of personnel files for certain types of purposes.
So this leads to my second question. That was what I understood. The second question is I understand that we contract with the FOP, and I wonder, the issue of personnel records, I believe, was also an issue under the contract, not just under state legislation. And so I wonder if Susan or Carlos has any idea on where we are in the negotiation process, and if so, whether the PAC might wish to speak to that now that we have been released from state bondage.
So
Can I just jump in for one quick second, just to say I am so in agreement. I'm so glad that Robin brought that up, because there is an effective date on the legislation also. It's 2022. So it only affects collective bargaining agreements post 2022. And that might be something that the county needs to consider in its bargaining process, that there may be an extension of the current agreement, may be a much better, because if anything gets negotiated before that date is going to be continued despite the state legislation. So thanks for raising that, Robin. That was super important.
So what we'll do is, just so that we make sure we give every subcommittee time, what we'll do is in those specific questions, just shoot Shabab and I an email, because I think it ties in also to the work plan on that we're going to talk about in the agenda, because that could be one of our recommendations, is that to make sure that this is considered when you're negotiating this next contract. But I want to make sure I give every subcommittee a chance to go. I am now going to go to Ms. Branson's subcommittee, if that is okay.
Yeah, that's fine with me. We haven't met since the last time we talked in this forum. I know we did send a letter or an email to Carlos seeking some clarification on what we there was an issue that we didn't know if it was covered in the hiring subcommittee or whether we could handle it. And forgive me, but I don't recall whether we got the response. So I think that's where we kind of are.
Justice, you want to jump in? Yeah, Sheree, I actually sent that to Shabab, so I apologize.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I need to follow up with you. But the basic question in the conversation that we had when we last met was really around, I'll call it general performance management and observation, right? And so I think that there's been a lot of conversation, and I read I won't get into depth on this, but as you read the report that from the Reimagining Committee, it talked a lot about culture, and it talked a lot about kind of the ongoing operation. What I don't know is we have, I believe, focused on hiring and discipline, but just what about general performance management, right? Officer promotion, right? Advocacy for those who are doing good things and how are they promoted, and just clarity around that, because I think that a lot of what I read in the Imagining report was around culture and building culture, but culture is a little nebulous and it falls in this gray area. I don't know where it sits. We in the discretionary policing were like, is that ours or is that the other subcommittee? So I think that we're just looking for clarity, because it is something that I do think that we have to address and we have to kind of confront head on. But that is something that is incredibly challenging as well because again, we've tried to make laws, but when you're trying to change a culture to kind of espouse a certain ideal, much harder work.
So I think that's a really good point. And I think that also ties into maybe specific recommendations that we'll have in terms of one, clarifying what culture is and how do you measure that, right? Because I think you raise a really good point. And I will say, and Robin, this isn't me putting you on the spot, but we talked about, Justice, your work with Microsoft in particular, and just how we can tap into that skill set when measuring success and measuring good policing, right? So we will come back to you when we figure out the work plan stuff, because I think that's going to be a good way to tie that in.
I would just want to add one sort of heads up that in the background we have been doing more work on traffic stops, and I think we'll be coming to the after the piece with Eric later that we're going to get to later, the next thing on our sort of discretionary agenda surely is going to be traffic stops, because, well, they're a highly popular form of contact between police and citizens. So, and they are very discretionary.
Yep, agreed. Okay, Jen, your subcommittee, please.
Yeah,
Por favor.
I'll go. I'm short and quick tonight. Yeah, Vernon and I, we met and we did discuss a little bit about the 5-year-old case and just frustrations around mental health and invisible disabilities, and getting help for parents that have no idea what to do when their child has an invisible disability. In addition to, other things related to that. It wasn't a very formal meeting because part of this, my hands are tied as well. I can't change the whole entire emergency response system for mental health and autism. However, what I have been
you can try.
I'm working, man. I tell you, I got myself on a couple other groups. I'm worming my way in. But I am working very closely with Dr. Santiago, who is the head of behavioral health, and I'm actually consulting with him every other week to make sure that this restoration center is there to serve everybody. It doesn't turn into just quote unquote drunk tank overdose place. If we're going to build a multi-million-dollar place, it's going to be there, and it's going to be able to serve autism and IDD in addition to all the other mental health challenges that happen. So right now I'm feeling pretty positive that our opinions are being heard, and they want to know our opinions. I mean, if I'm talking with Dr. Santiago every other week about it. So we're really working hard on, how to implement CAHOOTS and the Crisis Now model and some blend of the two, and where these people are going to come from. But it's just a very big collaborative effort. And the 29th is our next meeting with mental health an emergency response group that I put together with another colleague from HFC. So we're working, there's too many silos in mental health. So I'm trying to pull them all together. And I think the work will be less if we are working together. So that's where we are. And Vernon, I don't know if you had any other thoughts you wanted to add.
You did a perfect job. You did an A.
Woo! Thank you.
Awesome. Jen, you mentioned that you talked about the incident with the 5-year-old. What did I mishear that? What's in particular did you all discuss?
Oh, we just discussed, oh my gosh, it happened. Did you see the video? It was just very not a real official capacity, just how there's such a lack of mental health services for so many people across the board. If this child
was the 5-year-old, did he have a mental health?
Well, we don't know an exact diagnosis, but that mother needs help, and the family needs help. And the mom, there's not many resources for parents when they're at the end, and I've been at the end, and I know that. So,
but how with regard to training of the officers, did you all reflect on that?
I'm not sure. Yeah, we did discuss it, and we talked about a little bit about there's a lot of differences on how different cultures parent, and I think that's kind of why this was such a big balloon. It kind of went out there, and I didn't hear a whole ton. It died faster than I thought it would, and I think there's all different opinions. Like, I'm not going to judge someone's parenting. I just want to offer help. I mean, but the officers, I guess we can all agree that I don't know. Yeah, the officers clearly. I think that there were other issues involved, and that she may have been seeing something else before her than a little 5-year-old boy.
Well, if you listen through the whole presentation,
which I did,
the kid had obviously has some issues prior to this happening in the school. Either that he had some what do you call meltdown kinds of issues. And this was not the first time he threw the computer and all. And so we talked about where the counseling in the school, even of the kid, and who could have helped in that situation other than the police. So.
Right.
Right.
So
And
we
I
all
think-
agree that
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
that
Yeah.
wasn't the best.
And MCPS plays a role here too, in my opinion. How does he get out of
Agreed.
school? All of
Yeah.
that stuff has happened to me, and it had a very different outcome. People aren't getting resources, and people, it's.
Yeah.
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 And
I have no idea though what happened to the officers. If anything happened to those officers, I don't have access to that information, and nor do I know what should happen. I couldn't watch 30 seconds at a time.
I couldn't,
And
yeah.
I had to wait.
Very hard.
Yeah.
And we'll include also some of that, like recommendations for MCPS in our work plan too.
Yeah, the school can't be left out of this.
Right.
I think that's a big role. Mhm.
That feels like a perfect segue to our subcommittee. So I will turn it over to our chair, Jasmine Williams, for her update, unless Jasmine jumped off.
I know Jasmine's having some connectivity issues.
Yep. Okay, so I'll handle ours. So Jasmine and I, since the last time we met, we've spoken with multiple groups of youth and multiple groups of parents, and we are beginning to work on our part of the work plan in terms of specific recommendations for what some of this will look like, including what the real definition of resource personnel should be in schools, right? And what that looks like, and what the gaps are already that exist in MCPS. And so we've started to craft that. Our hope is to have a draft of our work plan done by the first week of May. So that is our hope, and then we'll continue our work there. Jasmine, do you have anything you want to add now that I see you back?
I'm sorry, I missed the first part of your update, but I don't think I have anything to add.
Okay, I just repeated yours. I just took yours. Okay, great. So what we're gonna do, because we have 30 minutes left, and I want to make sure that you guys get off here at 8 o'clock, is we're going to defer one part of this agenda, which was supposed to be a bigger part of the agenda, which was the reimagining safety task force recommendations. We're gonna move that to the other meeting, okay? Because that's a big chunk of the conversation, and if we get into it now, we will not be done by 8 o'clock. Okay. So I wanted to go now real quick to a conversation with Carlos regarding our work plan stuff. And Carlos, I know Shabab sent you the slide. If you can put that on the screen so everybody can see it.
Yes, 1 second. Let me. Right.
Okay, so as you guys know, there are certain things spelled out in the legislation that led to appoint us that we need to make sure we produce at the end of this first year. Carlos, go to the next slide for me, please. So this is where we stand right now, and I want you guys to take a look at this, because while I share Eric's frustration, I think that he shared at the beginning in terms of wanting to do more. There is a bunch that we have done and we are continuing to do, and I think we should feel good about some of that work that we've done. Next slide, Carlos, please. Okay, so this is what we've done in regards to advising the council, providing information on best practices, recommending policies and programs. So we've reviewed proposed legislation, and we've done that on an ongoing basis, right? We've referred one piece of legislation in support of to the council. What we have going forward is this is going to be our collective work plan that we'd submit for the first year. We're going to make actual recommendations to the county council for what we think policing should look like in the county, right? And that includes the emergency response that Jen was talking about. That includes the police presence in schools and what resource personnel looks like, traffic stops, all of that. It's going to encompass all of that. And remember, this work for us is not just a 1 year thing. But our hope is that we can check off enough over this first year, which I think we have, to then really hit the ground running in year 2 and then also in year 3. Next slide, Carlos. Okay. These are the things that are, the first one is that we have to conduct at least one public forum each year for community input on policing matters. The really good thing about the work that all of you have done is that what we've done even in our subcommittee meetings and in these bigger meetings is we have invited the public, right? But that's not a substitute for an actual forum. So we're going to start working on putting that together with the hope that, and Shabab, correct me if I'm wrong, the date it's going to be in June, right? That's our tentative plan.
I think we said July, and there's a slide on that in a little bit.
Yeah, okay. And then all of this stuff, all of the recommendations and everything that we're going to put together is an annual report that we have to submit to the county council by July 1st. Okay, so we have some time. And the good thing is that we've done a lot of the work already. Now it's just about putting it into a document that we can submit to the council. Next slide, Carlos. Okay. These are the things that we've done in regards to correspondence from the public, because the legislation says that we have to be as transparent with the public as possible. So we created a public comment portal on our website that we've gotten numerous submissions of, and a lot of us have implemented that into our subcommittee work. So kudos to you guys for continuing to do that. We will continue to receive and review those comments. We will translate that information into other languages to make sure that folks in underrepresented communities in the county can also submit their own comments, because one of the things that we've heard in different subcommittees is that, and even just when we're talking to community members, is that if the website can be a bit intimidating if it's only in English, right? So we want to make sure that folks who speak Spanish, Creole, whatever language they speak, they're able to submit their own comments too. Next, Carlos. All right. We were tasked with doing some public education. So we did the presentation on history of policing policy by Dr. Bell from the Smithsonian. Thank you again to Alicia for making that recommendation and connecting us to Dr. Bell. We also want to thank Caroline, who also sent us some recommendations, and also a thank you to Robin, who also sent us some recommendations. We're going to continue to do that, where we have multiple experts come in and speak to us and the public, because we think it's important to get different kinds of people presenting on the different kinds of information. So we'll continue to do that, and we'll continue to have the public hearings specific to certain topics like discretionary policing, emergency response, hiring and discipline, and policing in schools. Next, Carlos. Okay, so now for our annual report, like I said, really, because we're all broken down into subcommittees, this shouldn't be that difficult, because one, the work has been getting done. It's now just a matter of putting it onto paper, right? That's just going to be it. And then Shabab and I will sit there and we'll sift through and put it in sections, send it back to you guys to sign off on it. And then we'll send it off to the folks that appointed us. So our hope is that by May 10th, every subcommittee can submit 1 page or less, just a summary, almost like an executive summary that you would do for a research paper, highlighting the functions, the activities, and some accomplishments that you've had, and things that you would want to work on even for the next year. Because I think for us, the big point isn't just showing what we've done, but we also want to show what we're working towards, right? Because our hope is that in 3 years, there's no need for a police advisory commission, because we've advised them already, and they're a perfect policing is perfect in Montgomery County. All right, next slide, Carlos. All right, so the public forum, the forum is not going to be a presentation from us to the public. That's not what it's going to be. And I think it's important to stress that, because I think for us, we want to hear from them. We want to hear from everybody, right? We want to hear from folks in Wheaton, folks in Clarksburg, folks in Damascus, folks in Bethesda. We want to hear from the entire county, as many folks as we can get. And I know that the virtual setting may make that a little difficult, but it's ultimately our hope that, just like, Justice said, he's hopeful that we all can get together at some point in person. If we do a really good job virtually this year, then next year we'll do one in person, and then it'll be better that way too. But we want to make sure that we're not defensive towards people's experiences. We want to make sure that we don't dismiss those experiences. And even if we disagree with something somebody says, right, it's not our job to cast disagreements or opinions on what they're feeling in that moment. For us, it's about creating the space for folks that don't typically have that opportunity to speak to appointed or elected officials. Next slide, Carlos. Okay. So the proposed date is Monday, July 12th from 6:30 to 8. Again, our expectation is to do this virtually. Members of the public will speak. They'll get about 2 minutes to speak. And then our hope is that if there's folks that just can't make it that day for whatever reason, that they submit some testimony through our public comment portal, and then we can kind of pull those together. And Shabab and I have been talking about creative ways to disseminate that information in as safe and creative a way as possible, because I think it's important that we also have to acknowledge that there's going to be some folks who either can't because of work, right? Or maybe their kids are in 2 or 3 summer camp activities, and it's not going to be easy for them to participate during that, but we want to make it at least accessible to them as well. Okay. So Shabab and I, when we were voted as chair and vice chair, we looked at it and it was a 1-year term, and then we would have elections to select who the next chair and vice chair is. And so at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Shabab, because this is her slide.
Sure. Carlos, if you just go ahead to the next one. We wanted to make sure that there was a plan for leadership for the body moving forward. So we want to start that process sooner rather than later, just to make sure folks have some time to, so that there's enough time to prepare, people can think through their nominations, and we can have some overlap between the two teams. As before, feel free to self-nominate, or if there's someone that you think would be a really great officer, go ahead and nominate them with their consent. And for that, we just ask that you email our wonderful county staff, Carlos and Susan. We're asking for nominations to be submitted by the Friday before our next monthly meeting in May, so that we can announce the nominees at the May meeting. Following that, we want to give folks about a month, if people want to think through what they want to say, and so that at our June meeting, once we know who the nominees are, we can have a chance to hear from them and go ahead and have the election. We had some input from the county attorneys that secret voting might not be allowed for this kind of thing, unless we decide to move to a closed meeting and then come back once we're done. So we'll just try and sort those pieces out. Next slide, please. In July, our plan is to not have a regular meeting because at this point, our report will be published. Folks will have a chance to read it, and we'll have the public forum where members of the public can weigh in on that. And we also want to give ourselves some time to really process all the input coming in from the public, whether it's through the forum or through submitted testimony. So just to be cognizant of the amount of time that'll take, we're not having a meeting then. And then August will be the first meeting chaired by the new officers. So this way we'll have some time where we know who the elected officers are before they take office, so we can do any handoff that's needed. And I should say, I am not throwing my hat in the ring to run as one of the officers for the next round. While it has been such a privilege to be chairing this body, I'd love to see other folks get an opportunity to do that as well. And happy to answer any questions for folks who might be interested in an officer position.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So we have that. Before we go to the next topic, and look, right on time, because on our agenda it says 7:45 and we got 5 minutes to get to 7:45. Any questions?
I have one.
Alicia, and then I'll go to, was that you, Robin?
And then Sherry also has her hand up.
So Alicia, Sherry, and did I miss somebody?
Yeah, mine's real quick. I just wondered if you all were going to have this on any public announcements on radio or anything else other than just posting it on the website, the public forum piece.
Yeah, so Shabab and I have been talking about different ways to reach some of those folks. Some of that would include like Tiempo Latino, who really speaks to Silver Spring, Wheaton, and the Latinx community. So yes, we've been talking about different ways to make sure that we get as much participation as possible. Ms. Branson.
Sorry, yeah, I would also suggest my MC Media. I mean, I'm sure you all can figure out. I mean, there are a lot of different avenues. But I have a sort of a random, possibly a random question. We sent a letter with a recommendation to the council, and I'm wondering if we got a response. I don't recall seeing a response if we received one.
That's a good question. And as far as Shabab and I know, we haven't received a response. Carlos, would you do us a favor and just follow up with Council President Tom Hucker, just to make sure that they received the letter? And then once we get that information, we'll let everybody know. Because yeah, we haven't, as far as I know, we haven't received anything.
Because as I recall, the letter contained a recommendation for an amendment. And so, just to be rational, just sort of close the circle, if you will. I mean, if we're being asked to make recommendations, to weigh in on legislation, yada, yada, then if we're making recommendations, then, and if we're not being, if those recommendations are not being considered, then, we have a different kind of problem. I mean, if they think that our recommendations are, this is crazy off the wall, y'all don't know how legislation works, then, let us know, but, I said that it is difficult for us to fulfill our role, not receive
I think
feedback.
I think that's
I think it's been over Marta's on days account.
right.
So anyway, that's my question. If somebody could follow up, I think that would be helpful, especially, as we put together this report. It would be good if we could say, hey, we said this, the council accepted the recommendation, or the council rejected the recommendation. I think these need to be a part of our ongoing transparency with the public.
Yeah, I agree 100%, Ms. Branson. And I think also being able to say, they liked our recommendation, but didn't like this suggestion that we made here, right? I think being able to lean on that. So we'll get an answer for all you guys. But yeah, as far as of today, April 12th, Shabab and I have not received anything, but we'll follow up for you guys. I now want to pass
say
it.
one thing,
Go ahead, Carlos. Sorry.
So yeah, I haven't received a formal response from any of the council members. I do know that the PAC's recommendation on the community policing bill was put into a staff report. The Public Safety Committee held a work session on that bill. And they're really just starting to work through all the issues with regards to all the data pieces that need to be collected, or that MCPD will be asked, if it passes, the data pieces that they will be asked to collect.
Yeah.
So there was a lot in that staff report as well. It was over 100 pages. A lot of people had input. So I know they're not done speaking about that bill. So I'm sure that, once the amendments come up, there'll be more discussion on it, but I will send a follow-up for sure.
Awesome. Sounds good.
Can we get a copy of the staff report?
Yep, absolutely.
That would be great. And, and it would be helpful to know whether they require any further input from us. I mean, it's great to be included, but maybe, if they would like to hear from us differently, that would be good to know too.
Okay.
Sounds good. So we'll make sure that's clarified for us going forward too, because I think that'll also help us in the next year.
Yeah.
Mr. Ricks, real quick
Right. I
before
just
I go
want
to
to know,
Eric.
by charter, are we required to change officers annually?
No, but that's when Shabab and I were voted in, that was something. It was a 1-year term for the chair and vice chair.
Okay, yeah, I guess that's what I'm a little bit lost on. Can you go review a little bit regarding the term guidelines?
Sure, we'll do that, and then we'll circle back with everybody.
Okay.
Eric, I now want to pass it to you for your discussion on your proposal, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My proposal was circulated to everyone. The data in the proposal notes that even though the state's attorney isn't doing prosecutions for marijuana, the county is still doing thousands of marijuana possession arrests a year. This completely dominates all of the CDS arrests in the county. It strikes me that it would be appropriate for us to have a public hearing about what the impact of this is, what the objective of these arrests are, what the consequences of these arrests are, what the rationale is of making arrests where we know the state's attorney isn't going to bring these cases to court. So that struck me as it's a big part of what our county's police are doing. And it seems to me it's a key issue for us to begin to get insight into how decision-making is made and how the management of the police department translates, what are countywide law enforcement policies down to the officer level. So it's a motion that we decide as an organization that we're going to conduct a public hearing to examine drug arrest data and outcomes in Montgomery County and the policy implications thereof. And that's my motion.
I'd like to second that.
So is approved, right? Is that how you say it? So it is approved?
Well, no, you have to poll the question.
No, we have to poll the question, right? Okay, so
I call the question.
Yep. Okay, so let's have a discussion on it, Ricks, you had your hand up.
Right. What data do we have to indicate? Because I thought I had heard in the past that Montgomery County was not going after people on marijuana, that, unless it was over a certain amount.
It's not accurate.
My point, the data is in the memo that I circulated with the citations to the Maryland State Police annual report, with the precise number of the thousands of cases of arrests reported for Montgomery County for 2018 and 2019. Your impression about what the county's policy is correct. And I cite both the Washington Post and the Baltimore Sun about what the policy of the state's attorney is. But there seems to be a huge chasm between what the policy of the state's attorney is and what the Montgomery County Police Department policy is.
I would just add two quick things to that.
Go ahead, Robin.
Between 82 and 85% of drug arrests in Montgomery County are for simple possession. And that is a number that is far higher than the average for the state as a whole. Conversely, we make a very low, and the numbers are enormous. There were 5,000 such arrests in 2018 and 4,600 or something in 2019. That's an enormous amount of police manpower being used for something which is clearly not county policy and is clearly of no interest to the state's attorney in charge. So I think it's absolutely time that we looked at that.
I'd like to see us get a report from the chief and the state's attorney on where those, what constitutes those arrests, other than the data that you're putting out.
Absolutely.
Were they in?
Mr. Chair, if I could make a suggestion, it might be helpful if we pull up the resolution document through share screen, and then if we just have Eric sort of go through some of those points.
Could I just make one?
I understand that, and I don't want to carry us too long on this, but is there information that these arrests were made in concert with other things, or was it just that they were picking people up on the street for a nickel bag or whatever? As we used to say.
Yeah. Vernon, can I suggest something? I think the public hearing, I think the PAC should send a formal invitation to the chief to provide testimony to the public hearing.
Yeah, because I think, and Eric, if I may, before I go back to you, because I think Madam Chair's suggestion is a good one. I think this is a chance to clear that up, right? The data is pretty astounding. It's pretty astounding, and it's higher here than it is in other places, which I think gives us some pause, right? So if there are, to your point, Mr. Ricks, if there are points of discrepancies that he can address, right, and he can point out, I think this is a good chance for him. Eric, sorry, Carlos, do you mind putting on?
The state's attorney should be also.
Sure. So we'll extend an invitation. Yeah, we'll extend it if the motion passes, which Eric it will. But if the motion passes, we'll invite them. Carlos, do you mind just putting Eric's motion on the screen so everybody can see it? And then Eric, do you mind just talking us through it so then we can vote and go from there, if that's okay?
Yeah, let me pull it up.
While you're doing that, can I just make a point here? I think actually this is a very good model for us. We find an issue, we have someone on one of the relevant subcommittees write up a memo of this kind. We then do a public hearing and ask for input from all the relevant stakeholders and anyone else who wants to contribute, and including written testimony. And on the basis of that, we can then quickly move forward to making a recommendation as a PAC. And I think this is a very good model for us.
Yeah, I agree. And yes, that's a really good point. Eric, go ahead. Floor is yours.
I don't want to take more time because I don't think more time really is needed. I appreciate what Robin said, and I very much appreciate everything that Vernon said. Everything that Vernon said makes the argument why this resolution should be adopted. we need to understand what is behind these amazing statistics. The second page has the of the draft memo, has the data from the Maryland State Police. Excuse me, it's the data from Montgomery County Police Department to the Maryland State Police. If the Montgomery County Police, if these arrests are the result of other kinds of matters, well, that's certainly would help explain them, but that would be very extraordinary that there would be so many thousands of these arrests as the results of firearms investigations, rape investigations, burglary investigations, auto theft investigations, and so on. Typically, the way in which this data is reported, according to the FBI standards for uniform crime reporting, is that because any arrest of an individual can involve multiple charges, there is a hierarchy so that we don't report each single charge as a separate arrest. You didn't arrest one people and then report it as 10 arrests because there's a weapons charge and a burglary charge and a drug charge. You report the arrest for the most serious crime in the series of crimes that are involved. What this indicates is that these marijuana arrests, if they're following the methodology of the FBI, these were the most serious crimes charged in that arrest. So that, there are quite plausibly even more arrests for marijuana possession that are not reported in the marijuana possession arrest category because there was a weapon involved, there was a burglary involved, there was a stolen car involved, there was an assault involved. So, certainly the chief can explain that, and presumably the data, that the department has could explain that. But this is extremely disturbing, I think, to all of us, that when we have a state law of decriminalization, we have a state's attorney says, I'm not prosecuting these cases, that in 2019, you have 3,700 of these cases. In 2018, you have 5,000 of these cases. And we know these have historically overwhelmingly been people of color and blacks, at a rate far disparate than the rate for whites. This is a classic kind of thing that we ought to be looking into, it seems to me.
Can I offer just a point of clarity and I'm seeing this document for the first time. So one, I'm certainly taking notes to take back to Chief Jones and be prepared for whatever we need to provide and have further conversation. But I look at the numbers and right out of the gate, my guess is that the vast majorities are civil violations, not criminal arrests. So I believe the UCR data that the Maryland State Police has provided is from our reporting system. So a police report may capture that that offense is the right term, the offense, and be reported up statistically in that manner. But it's a whole different thing to talk about criminal charges and arrests, which I know Mr. McCarthy has been very clear about, not prosecuting criminally, but the civil violation of possession of marijuana under 10 grams is still something that is on the books and occurs. So we will work on getting more clarity. And just one other point, because I'm not totally clear on I have to look at the data source of this, but we are a NIBRS agency now. It's called a National Incident-Based Reporting, which is a newer FBI standard, which actually captures all of the offenses that occur. But we will work on getting it. I just want to make sure there is clarification between a physical arrest of somebody versus somebody getting a civil citation. And I feel like that's where the numbers may be kind of merging together.
Officer Patel, can I just ask you to clarify one thing?
Sure.
This says arrest, and to me, an arrest means that you go to jail. You may be released immediately. You may not be charged criminally. But arrest to me means being taken into custody. Is that not the case?
I will tell you, I'd be astounded. I don't believe that those numbers bear proof for a physical arrest. I believe that they are probably commiserate with a mix of arrests, like you're saying, like we often pull over a car with odor of marijuana and we get guns out of cars. Like that's happens almost on a daily, if not weekly basis. So that's a whole nother concept, right? But my belief in looking at this for the first time right now is that these are marijuana civil citation charges, not criminal arrests. And I think there's just a merging of how the state police reports are reporting data for offenses. And so that's how I want to get clarity for everyone to make sure you have the right information.
It would be
Dalvin,
great.
can I
That's why I'm asking.
Can I make an amendment?
Yep,
Can I
yep,
make an
yep.
amendment? I do think it would be important to get an answer before we vote on this.
Yeah, and
If Eric would be okay for a friendly amendment to say we ask for a specific answer that we must get before the next meeting to what these numbers actually reflect, and wait for that answer, and then we'll vote at the next meeting whether, because I'm sensitive to the fact that we only have so many public hearings, and if in fact this is it could be clarified another way, then we should save that public hearing for something else.
Right, and that's my whole thing is that I think that we should get clarification on it first before we would have a public hearing, and then we would know what the data is really saying.
If I may.
Yes, Eric, go ahead.
The data says that these arrests are counted the way arrests are for opioids. They're counted in the same category as heroin, as fentanyl, as cocaine. If the police are reporting marijuana traffic tickets in the same way that they're reporting heroin arrests, well, that's absurd.
Don't you think, Eric, though, we should get the answer? I mean, I'm respectful of what Chief Patel had to say, that
So how about this? So how about we make an amendment?
Caroline.
Make an amendment. However, not to go until the next meeting because we're not meeting for another month. If we can get the information, Chief Patel, and please understand, I'm trying to be understanding of the time that it would take for you guys to get this information, but I think you can understand our sense of urgency because we don't want to hold up our process in order to, to have this hearing. How long do you think you would need to get this information for us? Because we don't want to wait a month.
No, sir. I think a week or less. I need to unpack the source of this data and make a comparative to what our number. And then what I also want to work with Mr. Sterling is to get you an answer on the methodology. Again, I think I know what's going on from the standpoint that I don't know that the state really differentiates between civil citation or criminal arrest. I think it's an offense reporting. So that's getting into the weeds, but I'm going to try to get you an answer for the whole group to understand that, so we're all speaking on the same sheet of music.
Okay, so Eric, if you're good with this, can we make an amendment where today is the 12th? Chief Patel, we would give you a week by April 19th to get us that answer, and then instead of us reconvening for Eric's proposal, we will send it. We will do it electronically because that can be done that way instead of us having to reconvene to hear the motion and all that, because that I think that's a lot to ask considering how pressed folks are for time. Does that sound good?
I accept the amendment.
Yep. Okay. So do we have a second for the amendment?
Second it.
There we go. So Carlos, just include that in the minutes that Eric's proposal has been amended to give Chief Patel 1 week until April 19th to get us the information that we need, and then we will reconvene electronically to see if we move forward on Eric's motion. Sounds good?
Can I make I want
yes,
to
Robin, go
clarify
ahead.
one thing for Caroline. I think I don't think we were imagining that this public hearing would replace either the next meeting or the larger public hearing later on. I think the notion here was actually that here's an important community issue, and we should have a practice of opening our doors and having a public meeting.
You don't have to clarify that to me. I totally agree with that. I think that's fine. I just think that based on the fact that we need more information.
Yeah. No, I'm good with the amendment. Absolutely. I mean, thank you. You got it exactly right. I just wanted to be clear that we could have a public meeting, by the end of this month if we want to.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so we have 2 minutes to go, and I want to make sure that you all get off here at 8 o'clock. No problem, Eric. Shabab and I want to thank you all for all the great work that you've been doing. I know that this has been difficult with us not being able to see each other face to face, right? But we have made the absolute best of it. Big thank you to Chief Patel and all the community members for joining us tonight. Really appreciate it. And we will, once we get that answer from Chief Patel, we'll disseminate it to everybody and we'll vote on the motion virtually, and then we'll go from there. Okay, but thank you guys honestly for all your work and all your continued work.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you both.
Happy Monday. See everybody next time.
I'm sorry, one second.
Carlos.
Was there a vote on the amendment?
Yeah. So
okay.
Robin first and Carolyn seconded it. If I got that right. Yeah.
But we still have to vote.
There was not a vote on it.
Oh, so, okay.
They moved it, so now we vote.
Okay. Let's vote in the chat. If you vote for the amendment, vote A. If you vote for the amendment. There you go.
Can you give that at the
You're on mute, Mr. Ricks. You're on mute, Mr. Ricks. I can't hear you.
Bernie, you're on mute. Unmute yourself.
Okay, can you clarify the amendment again that will be voted on?
Sure, no problem. The amendment is to grant Chief Patel 1 week from today, which is April 19th, to get us information regarding how the information that Eric cited has been populated in MCPD system. That's the amendment, and it seems like we're all saying A to it. So, yep. Okay.
Yeah, we have 9, so it does.
So we're good. Okay. Awesome. Thank you guys
A as
again.
an I, sorry. A as an I. Okay.
AI, it's all the same, guys. It's all the
I'm
same.
very serious. What happens if I don't meet the date? I'm kind of scared now.
Hey man. Hey man. I will come and personally see
we'll
you
come
and-
find you.
Yeah, we'll
All
come
right.
find you.
Fair enough. Got it.
We know where
I'm
you
going to
live,
meet the
yeah.
devil.
Exactly. Awesome. Thank you guys so much. All right. And have a good Monday. And we'll see everybody next time.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, Don.
Thank you, Carlos.
Thank you.